Hi, it's Jo Bingham. Welcome to my channel. So today's quick video is just a discussion and maybe some hints and tips on whether you should buy tubes or pans of watercolour, or maybe both. So I'm going to start off with pans. So this is my pan. They do get very messy. Before you even start painting, I have re-wet my paints. So I've rehydrated them because when the factory makes them, it squeezes moist paint into each of these plastic pans, leave them to dry, top up if necessary, and then sold dry. And so obviously you have to rehydrate them before you can use them. So I'm just going to start wetting the background of this painting, and I'll demonstrate two very short, quick paintings so that you can see for yourself the difference. Now, while I'm doing this, I will talk. So I would say the main advantages to pans are cost. Even though tubes are more economical, you know, if you're a beginner and you're starting out, if you buy a set of pans, then you can buy, you know, all the main colors, all the colors that you would need in one set. And it's, you know, it is sort of cheaper initially when you set up. They are very portable, so if urban sketching is your thing, it's really handy for that. So you can just pack up and go. They last a long time. You know, artists have known to have their pan sets for years and years. And I think probably there's less waste. I would say the main disadvantage is, and anybody that's used pans will know this, that when they're dry, they're extremely hard to tell the difference between colours. You know, ultramarine looks very similar to olive green, or, you know, or some of the browns. You see this one here is very difficult to tell from here, you know, and maybe this one. So you just have to make sure that you keep your colours in the same setup so that you know where colours are. Okay, so I've wet my background. I'm probably going to switch. You see, it's hard to sort of get a big flat brush into a pan, so we'll change to a nice number 10 round brush. We'll just choose some blue for the sky. And the other big disadvantage, which is why I don't use them, actually I might just move this up, there's a blue down the bottom. The main disadvantage why I don't use them very often is that, because I tend to work a bit bigger and I work very quickly, is that you know, all of this having to work your brush in, I find time consuming and irritating, and it's quite hard. We'll bring that back down. It's quite hard to paint large with pans. I find it quite hard to work large with pans. Much easier with tubes. But you can see the colours are nice and crisp. You do have to try and keep the colours separated. There is a risk that because the colours are quite close together, that possibly they might get contaminated. So you just have to be quite careful. But the colours are very nice. So I'm painting on cold pressed, it's just a cold pressed 300. Okay. So that's worked well on there. Right, we'll quickly do a nice orange. One of the other disadvantages, we'll use a red for the shadow, is that it's a little bit harder on the brushes. Because you're always trying to rehydrate your colours, it's a little bit harder on your brushes, but, you know, that's a fairly minor thing. So long as you're careful with your brushes will last for years. You see, when I went to do red, my brush drifted over into this one. You see how it's picked up another colour? Which might be okay, depending on what you're painting. That's often why I use a plate for my palette, because I like the fact they pick up other colours, but if you're not looking for it, it might be a bit irritating. So that's a demonstration of pans. Now we're going to switch to tubes. Okay, we're going to move on to tube paints. This is what they look like. So what you will need is a palette of some description, preferably a China palette, and obviously paper, and I think this is Ferenz Blue, this one, and obviously a good brush. So the main advantages with tube paints is that they're moist when they come out of the tube. They are ready to go. You don't need to re-wet them. And obviously you can make up huge amounts of paint if that's what you want, if you wanted to wet the paper. So we work, when it's particularly with skies, we work wet into wet. Now, if I wanted to, I could still use a flat brush because obviously I've got no restriction here. So if I had a large area, I probably would. So let's see. So that's what a flat brush does. And then we've got a round brush. Personally, I prefer a round brush when I'm doing this. Unless I'm doing a vast expanse, which I want to get down quickly, a round brush is a bit more flexible and interesting. So you can get interesting marks, and you can obviously get in, you know, if I wanted to paint around my petals, a lot easier with a round brush. So gram for gram, tube paint is cheaper. You just have to be a little bit more careful when you're cleaning your palette that you don't wash all your paints off, because that's where the waste comes in. That, you know, it could be wasteful. But as long as you're careful, don't squeeze too much out when you're putting your paints out. And when you're doing your colour mixes, don't use the whole lump of paint when you're painting. So this is actually a really clean palette, but you can see I've still got dregs of others that I've put out and which I haven't washed away, so I can still use it on another painting. Okay, so that's the background. I'm just going to put a little bit of this, what's it called? Dioxazine purple out. Now, my personal preference is for tube paint because I just find it easier, quicker, to be able to just put the colours that I want out onto my palette. That means I don't have to go looking and trying to work out which colour is which on my little pan of colours, pan set. I've got all the colours there, and you know, as I said, I don't have to worry too much if there's some paint left. I know that I'm going to use it later. You'll find, you know, whatever it is that you paint, you'll have a favourite set of colours that you use all the time. So the waste is cut down to a minimum. And then we'll just have a little bit of Hansa yellow for the middle. And then I'll just quickly recap the advantages and disadvantages before I go. Right, and then a bit. The reason I chose purple for the petals is because obviously it's the complementary colour of the yellow for the middle. And so it makes it all nice and stand out. Makes it really bright. Okay. I forgot to put the stem in. Let's mix the yellow with the green, with the blue. See if I can make some sort of a green there. Okay, let's recap. So with the pans, it's quite cheap to buy a new set of, you know, a small set of colours with all the basic colours in there. Portable, great for urban sketching or taking on holiday. There's less waste, less mess. The colours are easy to control, and they're lasting. They do last a long time. Main disadvantages in my mind is that it's very hard to paint large scale, and you tend to mix the colours up a little bit. They contaminate each other because they're quite close to each other. And and it's quite expensive weight for weight. They're quite expensive way to buy to buy paints. Tube paints, advantages, you can paint large. So you can they could be wasteful if you don't, use all of the paint that you put out. You could waste this paint, but again, if you have your favorite colors, you reuse them. Weight for weight, they're cheaper than pans. Main disadvantage is that they are messy and they're less portable. And they have the potential for more wastage. And obviously, if you want to travel, I probably wouldn't recommend taking the tubes with you because it would be very messy. But anyway, that's it in a nutshell. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.